So welcome to each and to all to this special holiday edition of Todd Talks, where my guest today is legendary football coach and ambassador of the game, Grant Teaff. For the vast majority of you who are joining us today, Coach needs no introduction, but allow me to jog your memory. After having played both high school and college football, Coach Grant Teaff became the head coach of McMurray University. Coach Teaff then became an assistant coach at Texas Tech before becoming head coach at Angelo State. Then from 1972 through 1992, Coach Teaff served as head coach at Baylor University, leading Baylor to 128 wins in 21 seasons, the most of any coach in the program's history. Coach Teaff earned Southwest Conference Coach of the Year honors no less than 6 times. He was also named National Coach of the Year by the American Football Coaches Association and the Football Writers Association of America. Coach Teaff's Baylor teams won 2 Southwest Conference titles and appeared in 8 bowl games. Thus far, Coach has been placed in 8 Hall of Fames, including the College Football Hall of Fame and the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. After retiring from coaching, Coach Teaff became executive director of the American Football Coaches Association, a position he held until he was named the director emeritus in 2016. Coach Teaff is widely and rightly noted to have had a profound impact on the game of college football, not least upon players, coaches, and their families. Coach, as you know, is married to Donnell, who has served as a member of the Baylor University Board of Regents, and they have 3 adult daughters. Well, welcome, Coach, and thank you for joining me today, especially on a holiday.
Todd, it's really a pleasure to be with you, and to those out there that are tuning in, I hope that you'll be able to garner something from our interview here that can be beneficial to you in your ministry and in your work. And so I'm ready to go, Todd. Let's just let her rip.
Okay. Well, Coach, I have some questions lined up, as you know. Coach, over the years, you've been widely known and perhaps best known for bringing your Christian faith to bear on the game of football. I'm interested, and I think those who are joining us are interested in knowing when you began to see this as a possibility, and what have been some of the more significant obstacles and opportunities you've experienced in seeking to do so.
Well, Todd, I was raised out in West Texas in a town called Snyder, Texas. It's between Abilene and Lubbock. And I had a great background. My mother and dad were both Christians. When the doors opened, we were in the church. I mean, it didn't matter Wednesday. If they called a meeting on Thursday, we'd be there. And I had some experiences with that, you know, because as a child, you get a little bit tired of that. And fortunately for me, early on, I had a Royal Ambassador, had great teachers when I was in the elementary area, but then I moved into the next level and was really blessed to have a leader in the Royal Ambassadors, RAs, and he not only helped us with programs that we enjoyed, but developed a real interest in our studying of the Bible. And so starting to study the Bible, I realized that that man is mental, and he is physical, and he is spiritual. That's what separates us from the other animals of the kingdom, is that a spiritual part, and then of course our ability to rule over the other animals of the kingdom, or the animals of the kingdom. And so what I began to understand was that, first of all, that I'd been created for a purpose. God, I believe, just didn't send people to the earth, create the opportunity for them to be in a family and to grow and to be influenced. And I was very, very specially influenced by my mother and dad, who were extremely hardworking people. I mean, they worked all the time, and we didn't have a lot. And but one thing that I knew, that come Sunday morning, I was going to be in Sunday school, and I was going to be in big church. And so you know, I grew up with church as a part of my life. And when I was 12 years old, I accepted Christ and walked the aisle in First Baptist Church, Snyder, Texas. And from there, it's like, I think most Christians, it's a growing process. It's not the end, it's simply the beginning. You know, you're just not concluding something in your life, you're beginning something in your life. And that is a relationship with Christ, and then trying as a human being to follow Jesus's teachings. And it's really hard, you know, in every aspect of our life. It's not easy. And my profession was one that which made things kind of tough, because you have to live with, you know, getting, say, just the physical game itself, injuries to your players, development of your players, you have to deal with that. Officiating, all of that comes into it. Then you got the television and the nuances that's put on you to be ready to do this at a certain time. It's it really takes away from your concentration of the game. So I had to find ways to bring that concentration to my team. And interestingly enough, it was through our, what we called our devotionals, our team devotionals. And I was having those before anybody else I know of in the country. And the reason that I joined the Fellowship of Christian Athletes was that they provided great material for my needs. And it was a blessing to be able to be a part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I've been with them all these years as a volunteer, and I will remain that way because it's a great, great ministry. But, you know, I think if we surround our families and we surround those in our workplace, or in my case, a football team, with the truth, and then for them to be able to see, Todd, the way I live, the way I do my business, and that speaks more than any sermon I could deliver to my football team. And I think it does to our families. And in essence, I really believe it does in our communities. You know, some of the greatest Christians that I have been able to follow in my life weren't the kind that could get up and preach a sermon, but they lived a sermon in their lives. And so, you know, I that's really basically, Todd, what I tried to teach to our players, that, yeah, you got to be macho, you got to be tough, you got to be willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to be successful on the football field, whether it's painful or whether it's just strenuous. You got to be able to do that. And I felt in my life, and I felt with the players that I coached, that once they learn to do that, to give their all to something, then they can learn to apply that in other areas of their life and give their all to that, whatever that might be. In their marriage, marriage is extremely important. And I felt very strongly about my players as they would move into that area of life. But I had hoped that they would be prepared to be the kind of husbands that they needed to be to have a successful marriage. And part of that is your willingness to give everything you have to something. You're not just giving part of it. If you're married, you give everything you have to that, into that area. In your business, you do the same thing. And God blesses that. And it's not easy. It's real easy to mouth, but it's not easy to do and to live.
So, Coach, football taught players discipline, and that discipline could be applied into many areas. Coach, growing up, I used to watch regularly on Saturday afternoons the ABC's Wide World of Sports. And I remember vividly hearing the introduction to that program saying along the lines, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. As a football coach over the years, you've certainly experienced both. And I wonder if you might reflect with us on some of your more satisfying wins as a team and some of your more disappointing defeats that were yours over the years. Do you have a couple of examples for us?
Yeah, of course. I've probably got a lot of examples both ways, but whoever coined that verbiage, probably somebody in an office at ABC or someplace that never hit a lick at a suck egg dog. They came up with that idea, not really knowing what it meant. But to those of us that have lived it, both as players and as coaches and participating that way, we know exactly what it means. And I tell you, Todd, my life has been one blessing after another, and it's just so satisfying to be able at this point in my life to look back and know that the things that I believed in were valid, and the one that I believed in as my Savior was valid. And it's not tricky stuff. It's valid stuff. And so as you get older, I think you feel more comfortable in that. When we're young, a lot of it is, display and trying to learn how to give your testimony, make us talk to other people about Christ. It's a process. But when you can get to the point where I am, you can look back and see so many things that you thought were of God, and then to really realize they were of God.
Coach, you've spoken at too many events to number over the course of your life and career. Arguably, your best known speech was to your football team prior to the 1978 Baylor-Texas game. If I recall correctly, you had a habit of beating Texas with some degree of regularity. Many of our listeners would be disappointed if I did not ask you to tell us about that pregame talk.
Well, it's not one of my favorite things to talk about, because if you weren't there and you weren't involved in the environment, it sounds really creepy. But we were practicing. We were huge underdogs to Texas that year, and we were practicing out on the field, and it was on a Thursday afternoon, and we were rather lethargic, and I was not very happy about that, but I had to choose my words properly at that point, because the hay's in the barn, so to speak, on Thursday afternoon. So I remember pulling them together and trying to come up with something that would demonstrate to them what it's going to take to beat Texas from an individual standpoint. In other words, you got to be willing to do what it takes. And so I came up with this story about the fisherman, real cold day, and he put the worm in his mouth to keep it warm. And, then the end of the story is you got to keep the worms warm, if you're going to be successful. And so anyway, I didn't think much more about that. And then on Friday afternoon, we were rather lethargic as we had our final afternoon workout, and I wasn't very happy about that. We're playing Texas. and you better get your head screwed on straight. Otherwise, you're going to get it knocked off. So I told him, I said, I want to give you something to think about. So I told him the story about the fisherman who put the worm in his mouth to keep it warm so it'd be wiggly, and then the fish would bite it. And so it went over about like it's gone over with you there, Todd. Like, oh, really, Coach? but anyway, I told him, and I don't think it was maybe the right medicine at the right time. So anyway, Saturday morning, I thought about that story, and I thought about, I got to put life to that story. I've got to make it mean something. So I got in my car and go over there on Valley Mills, one of those little 7-Eleven type stores, and I go in, and the guy recognized me immediately, and he said, "Coach, what do you need?" And I said, "You have any worms?" He said, "Worms?" I said, "Yeah, fishing worms." "Yeah, we got some over there, and they're in that little box." I went over, got me a box, came back, put the money down. He looked at me, and he wanted to ask a question. And I said, "No, I'm not going fishing before the game. I have another purpose. You'll probably read about it in the paper." And so I go back and with those worms, and then we have a meeting before they go down and start taping to go out on the field. And so, I had this little thing I just said to him, about what we should be willing to do on this day to beat the University of Texas. And I said, here's what the deal is. I can't get on the field. I can't play for you. I can't think for you on the field. But while you're on the field beating Texas, here's what I'll do. And I pulled that worm out, and I held it up and jiggled it, and I said, "I'll keep the worms warm." And I opened my mouth, and I dropped that worm in the corner of my mouth. And those guys went absolutely nuts. And so I just directed them out the door so they get out of there. I could take that thing out of my mouth. And so they went out on the field, and I took him out and put him in the trash as I went outdoors, and then went on the field, and we proceeded that day to beat Texas. And I don't know, honestly, if that had anything to do with the victory. It might have been a deterrent to success, making them sick, but they won in spite of everything. So that became a legend, that thing. But I didn't eat the worm, first of all. Secondly, if I had them, they're all protein, but I didn't. Thirdly, they have no taste. It's just like biting into a piece of rubber. And so I took care of that buddy really nice, because he did a great job for us. When I held him up, he kind of held his little old head over and looked like he was in pain. So anyway, that's that story. And we did beat Texas that day. And I doubt the worm story had anything to do with it, except it created legend, that it actually happened, and it did.
Well, Coach, that's the first time that I've heard the full version of the story. I always started with the locker room, and so that's a real treat today. Coach, I first met you and Mrs. Teaff Donnell as a high school junior way back in 1982 at First Baptist Church of Waco, where we are both still members. And our families have been friends over the years from then until now, roughly 40 years. Your shared commitment, that is your and Donnell's commitment to Christ and to the church, has been steadfast and has meant so much to so many, including me. I'm wondering if you could share with us how these commitments to Christ and the church have strengthened and sustained you over time, even until now.
Todd, it's when you look at life, you look at your own life, you don't really realize it at the time, but there is clearly a presence of God in the lives of those who believe. And sometimes it's amazing miracles that happen. Sometimes it's just the little things that happen. But I can say clearly, beginning with my opportunity to meet Jesus a lot quicker than I wanted to. And that was when we had a plane crash. I was the head coach, young head coach. I had about 23 years old. And everybody survived it. We played a game in Louisiana, and we were flying back to Abilene, Texas, and the plane had all kinds of engine problems, and we lost one engine, and then they said they were going to have to come in with a belly landing, and we did that in Shreveport, Louisiana. And we went in, and it was a big federal base as well. And we went in, and they did not think we were who we were. So they had all the MPs out. So when we landed, crash landed, I might add, they were there to arrest us, which is a little known story, but we were illegally on Strategic Air Command base in Shreveport, Louisiana. Wow. But the plane engines both caught fire. The interior of the plane did not catch fire, but it was the engines they were burning. I was worried about an explosion, from the gas. And so when we finally plane stopped sliding, we came in on the belly land without any wheels. All the wheels were up. So the pilots brought it in, and those were aluminum fuselages, the sparks just engulfed that plane. So when it came to arrest, one of my coaches back at the back kicked the door open, got it open. And so then all of a sudden, here comes the co-pilot just wading through all of us. It had a single aisle down the middle, held about 38 passengers, I think. And so we don't know what he's doing, but we found out later he went to the back of the plane and took the elevator locks off the plane. We had taken off and landed with the elevators on the tail section of that airplane locked. They had no control over that on the back there. So anyway, I saw him do it, and then they had a lot of hearings about that plane crash, and he was the one that forgot to take them off, and they took off with them in the air, and so I don't know what else happened to it. The reason we crashed, but we did. But from that, I tried to lead our players in the thought process that, we had been in a really scary situation. We had been spared, and it's up to us to find out now what God really wants us to do with our lives. This is a second chance that we have to do what God wants us to do. And it's not clear. It's you in the ministry understand that. I hadn't heard of anybody where he really wrote in flaming fire in modern day times so that you could see you're supposed to do this. You got to use your own brain. You got to use your heart, everything that touches you about what you need to do in life. And so, so many of those young men, we had a prayer, by the way, on that plane. Players asked me to pray, and I stood up in the back between the two aisles and bowed my head and prayed the most fervent prayer that I can ever remember praying, because it was about the lives of all my young men and our coaches. And we were very young. All of our coaches were young as well. And so, it made an indelible mark on a lot of those players, for their coach to pray for their lives and pray for as safe a landing as we could have. We knew it was going to be a crash landing. So that happened, and we went in and walked away from that plane, and not a scratch on anybody. Nobody was hurt in any way, and both engines caught fire when we crash landed, and we got out of that before the plane burned. And it was just one of those amazing things that it's easy to say, you know, because I've said it so many times, but it's still very emotional in the sense that all these lives, these young people went on to serve their life, whatever they were going to prepare to do, but they all knew very well that they had been a part of something extremely rare and that they had been blessed in a very special way. And I tried to make sure that they knew and understood that.
Wow, Coach, what a stirring story. Thank you for sharing that. Coach, I have one other question for you this morning, and it's this. If there ever were a dynamic duo, it is you and Mrs. Teaff, Donnell. Baylor has rightly recognized this, naming the two of you legendary mentors. And more recently, in fact, so recent that it has not even been formally announced yet, our seminary has named its sports ministry program in honor of the two of you.
Wow.
Ecclesiastes 4:9 tells us that two are better than one. How has this been true for the two of you over the course of your married life? Stories are told that not only would Donnell write players' notes, but she showed up at many of the practices, in fact, most all of the practices. So I'm interested in how the two of you have shared life and career together and the impact that this has made.
You know, it's really interesting because when we met and fell in love and made a decision to get married, I told her what my life's goals were and that her role would have to be as strong as my role, not only as a mother to help take care of any children that might come to our marriage, because in coaching football, it's basically a 24-hour-a-day job. You do get a chance to sleep 5 or 6 hours every now and then, but it just takes it, and I had to make sure she understood that, and she did, and she was certainly I'm prejudiced on this, but I believe she was the best coach's wife that I've ever seen anywhere, because we have an organization that's a part of the American Football Coaches Association. It's the coaches' wives. And so I know many coaches' wives. And interestingly enough, although they all look different and sound different, they're all stamped with the same stamp. You know, they just make great coaches' wives. And those that don't understand the amount of time that it takes, involvement that the husband has to give, we end up seeing those drift apart. And they're very few and far between, I might add.
Well, that's amazing. We're so grateful for your work, your witness, Coach. And as we conclude our time this morning, for which I'm most grateful, I just want to invite you to share with us a parting word. What are you thinking? What do you have to say, Coach?
Well, you know, I'm not sure who all is listening today, but whoever you are out there, thank you for tuning in, and it makes me feel good to know that you're out there and you're interested in what I might have to say, and I appreciate that very much. But I think, in all honesty, if each one of us, myself included, will look inward into our lives, no matter what age we are, or what position we hold, just look inward and see if we are committed to living our life for Jesus Christ. I don't want to give an altar call here, Todd, but I think it's important that all of us take time, and particularly in this scary time in America today. And we're not through with all this stuff, friends. There's still some time to go through this. But as we do self inspections, let us look not only at our physical side and our mental side and our mental development, but our spiritual side as well. And that needs to be correct. It needs to be absolute, and it needs to be of you and God.
Coach, so grateful for your life, your witness, your testimony, and just want to thank you so much for your time today. It's meant a great deal to me and to those who've been able to join us. Coach, I wish you a happy new year, and for all who have joined us today, the same for them. See you soon, I trust, Coach, and take good care between now and then.
Thank you, Todd. Enjoyed being with you.
It was a joy, Coach. Thank you. Bye for now, everyone.
You take that off.